Boy, I was half asleep an hour ago. So anyway, um, I'm awake, and now we've got that first story from Bloomberg, which said they have sources that Broadcom is in talks to acquire VMware, which has a about $40 billion market cap. And the next one is from the New York Times that Facebook and Apple and Amazon and Microsoft, that's FAM, FAAM, and Google, previously known as FANG, but now we're replacing Netflix with Microsoft. So you got FAAMG, FAMG.
Tyler, there's
Yes.
a very interesting statement there. I talked to one of my mates that's 27, and when I started talking about the future of FANG and how decentralization and all of these acquisitions and all these startups are going to create the future version of FANG, he quickly was like, yeah, it's MAMA, which is basically Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple.
Mama G.
Yeah, Mama G, exactly. Look
Mama
at that,
G.
Tyler. Mama G.
No, it's
That's
alphabet.
so much
Alphabet.
better, Mama G.
Mama, MAMAA. So because the Google is alphabet.
Yes, MEMMA. MAMAA.
A mama.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
So
alpha.
Facebook.
Mama with the long A.
Mama.
Mama with the long A. It's like a child whining for their mother.
Facebook, Apple, Amazon. This is according to the New York Times. All the big tech companies will emerge stronger from the downturn. Flush with cash, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google are positioned to emerge from a downturn stronger and more powerful as usual. Okay.
Where is Intel and Nvidia in that?
Yeah. That's yeah. What is Nvidia's market cap?
It's like about 1 trillion, is it?
Is it getting to $1 trillion? It could eventually get into that club for sure. The next is from TechCrunch. Step N, a Solana-based app that rewards users with tokens for walking and running, says it has 2 to 3 million monthly active users and makes $3 to $5 million a day in net profit from trading fees. Steppen, now I get it. Step letter and Steppen, because it's all about reward.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool app, Tyler, but the challenge is that it's a bit of a bitch to get the activation code through Discord because it is so I mean, like literally, you'll be lucky if you get your activation code because of the fact that they only allow 500,000 users in the Discord, and your authentication number that you need populates every 12 seconds, and it seems like there's like 100 people jumping on that to get that code. So it's literally you got to spend like a few hours just to even attempt to get that code because it's gotten so popular. So that number is absolutely correct for sure. It's definitely interesting. But there's also another one called Sweat, and they haven't released their token yet, and they are going to release in the summer. It's here in Europe, and it pays you crypto to walk, to basically just walk and do what you do on a normal day, and you can claim extra tokens and stuff. And I think people I know have like something like 200-300 already because they've been using it, walking around, doing all their errands and stuff. So I think that's going to be that'll be one of the new use cases for keeping people fit. And if we go down the ID spectrum and the health and wellness spectrum, the wellness industry is a $1.4 trillion industry, but it's not being tapped as much as it probably could, in my humble opinion, and from my personal experience as well.
Just had a thought that if they marketed Steppen to like music festivals, how many tokens they'd be giving away
Oh
in a
my
short
God, those
bit.
at the Dutch festivals, they would literally all be rich for the summer for sure.
I would love to see those numbers.
You and me both.
And Nvidia's market cap is only 412 billion, by the way.
412
And
billion.
not too long ago, it was 800 billion.
I was
So
about to
quite
say, what was it a
different.
month ago? Yeah.
Well, a lot of things were worth a lot more.
Okay. Well, it was approaching the trillion club. That's respectable. Okay, so the next big story is from the New York Times that Meta says it plans to give outside researchers more information on political ad targeting on Facebook and Instagram, and will update the ad library with more info from July. Academics and journalists will be able to see more data about the way political ads are used to target users across Facebook and Instagram. Moving on, Wall Street Journal says that after Elon Musk attempted to pause the Twitter deal, internal chat logs detail bewilderment among employees. The vice president, Jay Sullivan, says a chaos tax will continue. Deal has left employees bewildered about what their jobs are and will be. Yeah,
He's gonna. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, so I was just gonna say, have you guys seen? I don't know if it's real. There was a video that was circulating. I don't know if it was like kind of a, I don't know if it was an intended, what's it called, interview. It's almost like a hidden video camera interviewing a Twitter employee, and he was saying how Twitter's communist inside. We only work like 4 hours a week, and mental health is like the number one thing. You can take months off if you need to, and they were just talking about like the culture inside Twitter. It's kind of crazy.
I don't know how, like, I don't really trust any of the videos that happen that are not clearly attributed and acknowledged off, like, in a different format, because there are so many fake videos and scams and stuff. But one of the things I think that I would like to look at it, because I think that sounds pretty funny actually. But one of the things that I think that he's going to get in trouble with is that he seems to be manipulating the price through these things. And that is one of his constant MOs, is what it's, is dealing with using chaos and using everybody hanging on his word to manipulate prices. You've seen that he's done that before with both Doge and Bitcoin, and he of course lies. This whole idea of why he didn't accept Bitcoin for Teslas, it was completely manufactured. But I'm not entirely certain whether or not the case, like, I know that he's being investigated for 2 cases, and there's still, of course, this issue of whether or not he's even allowed to tweet on, because the SEC rejected his last deal over his last market manipulation using Twitter. So, I think, first of all, his potential liability in the future is only going to be incredibly expanded if he does end up acquiring Twitter. I would not be surprised if all of this is just chaos, that he ends up not, he ends up not actually purchasing something and just trying to, bring in a lot of chaos in the market, because he seems to like to do that. He's also announced he's going to be a Republican. And so I don't know if that's intended to indicate that Twitter is going to take on a more Republican or conservative bent or something like that. I have no idea. There's just a lot of confusion that's going on, and this is so atypical for those of us who've been in this market. Is so atypical of how anything like this happens, particularly when you're dealing with something that's a public security. So much of this stuff has to be controlled that the amount of just leakage of information is truly insane. The only way to release yourself from a huge amount of that liability, honestly, is to just not have it close. So, I'm kind of, I'm both surprised and not surprised that this is happening. I'm surprised because this is not how most of these transactions happen, but I'm not surprised because I'm not really, I think maybe it's Elon's board. I'm not entirely sure what's happening here, but all of this is just, this chaos is meaningless. The thing about the Facebook thing, though, is, I don't know if you saw this, that they're now getting censured because of the pro-Russian propaganda that has been released, I guess, in Slovakia. And so there's some regulatory issues that are coming out now against, it's always going to be Facebook. I know it's supposed to be Meta. It's just going to be Facebook forever and ever until the day all of us are dead.
If I may just add something quick. There's a lot of give and take during mergers and acquisitions that happen, and usually this happens behind closed doors and by professional negotiators who will negotiate a lot about the deal. There will be a lot of changes, and they will influence the internal politics of each company that is going through the mergers in this case, or the acquisition in the case of Elon Musk. However, Elon Musk seems to take to the public for everything that happens, exposing all sort of information that is usually under the NDA in this case, and including some of the protocols or that the algorithms are performing internally. And he has been caught doing that. He seems to be a little bit, more talkative about this, and he shouldn't be, because a lot of this stuff usually tend to stay internal. Now, if it wasn't Elon Musk, it was just regular people doing this, it would not make the news. But because of his influence in social media, a lot of this is just going everywhere, and it's causing all sort of work stoppage or issues for a lot of people, including influencing and possibly manipulating the markets in certain ways. Now, that sounds a little bit childish, but this is what we've started to notice from Elon's, all sort of outbursts on Twitter. I think at some point, people will realize that they shouldn't be listening to what is going on, but I doubt that anybody is going to stop. So this is how a lot of people are seeing it at this point. And if it wasn't for Elon Musk being in this position, we wouldn't be hearing about Twitter acquisition every single day and all sort of crazy madness happening around it. But in regular deals, that normally also happens, but we just don't hear about it. Thank you. Land my plane there.
Everyone, just keep in mind, this is a signed deal. This is not like it's being negotiated. It's a signed deal. There's a breakup fee, and beyond the breakup fee, there's a clause in that deal that allows Twitter to sue him for failing to consummate the deal. I mean, they filed a case. They announced debt structures and lenders. I mean, so this is a lot more than just something that's being negotiated that leaked. I mean, this is him basically, after signing the deal, trying to figure out how he's getting out of the deal or trying to get a lower price. I mean, it's a whole.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but exactly, that's exactly the thing is that right now, I mean, I imagine any breakup fee is nothing for him. It's just like like cash around the house. But
We do
I
have to take into consideration, though, and Alex, you'll know this better than me, but there's probably a clause written in there that they had to confirm a certain number of bots, and if that's not correct, he can clearly break the contract without breaking the contract. He can
No,
get out of
no,
the
actually,
contract
that's
without.
not true. Well, that's so what Twitter said is that he did zero due diligence. Okay, he didn't ask a single question about bots. So I doubt there's a bot thing in there. Okay.
I agree. I think right now he's issuing he looks like he's trying to get out of it, or what he's doing is literally just cashing in on a position he had in Twitter. But most of this stuff, this is not the way these deals work. There's for sure lots of negotiation that happens. None of it is public, and most of it can't be public. So all of this stuff that we're hearing right now, he looks like he's just trying to get out of the deal. And I imagine since he had to refinance, I don't know if you guys talked about that at all, but he had this margin loan, and there was such an outcry. His stock was declining because of the amount that he had included in this margin loan. He's had to do some refinancing, and maybe you guys have seen this. I haven't seen that those deals have closed yet. So I imagine what he's trying to do, and maybe at its very core, like at its roots for this right now, is really just that he can't secure the money.
Or it's something like the $1 billion penalty is nothing compared to how much the stock might fall if he keeps tweeting. So he might give himself a discount at the cost of $1 billion.
And you might
But
you
he
might
can't
even
go
say he's
against the
working
strike
against
price.
himself in that his challenges for the valuation based upon the chatbots um, is driving the price down at a time he's trying to get funding. Not a great strategy.
Okay. Next up, yeah. Let's see. Next one is AMD announces new CPUs. Okay, that's a little too geeky for our taste. The next is for about YouTube takes down 70,000 videos and 9,000 channels covering the Ukraine war for violating content guidelines, including videos referring to a liberation mission. And The Guardian is calling this an exclusive. YouTube takes unprecedented action to address content guideline violations since invasion.
Did you see at all that the Russian soldiers? So there's a Russian soldier who admitted that he ran away. He did not want to fight in this war. They apparently have taken the cell phones of all of the soldiers since March. And so apparently, even when they were painting those tanks white and putting that Z on it, they had no idea what was happening. They didn't know that they were even going to attack Ukraine until they were en route. So this means, first of all, that they were probably planning this obviously since March, but also that a lot of the soldiers, the Ukrainians estimate, 60% or more of the soldiers of the Russian soldiers have no interest in this war, but it's a Ukrainian source, so I don't know how legitimate that is. But this soldier is naming other people who have tried to go home, and everybody who wanted to go home has all requests to go home since this, the mobile phone ban have been declined. So these people have basically been out on deployment for, months with zero communication except from, their leaders, their military commanders, and that's it. So I thought it actually gave a different light in what is actually happening in the field there. A bunch of people who are like, I don't even know that we're part of this, combined force thing, because they don't really have any access to outside information.
Okay. The next
But
is
everywhere there are deserters everywhere, or people who do not want to engage in that war. So it is kind of expected.
Bloomberg says they have sources that Amazon, which has too much warehouse capacity after the pandemic, is looking to sublet over 10 million square feet in New York, California, and elsewhere. Stuck with too much warehouse capacity now that the surge in pandemic-era shopping has faded. Okay. The next is Xiaomi signs a long-term partnership with Leica, the camera company, and announces a jointly developed smartphone which will launch in July, 2 months from now. Likely with the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, that's the top of the line chip. So maybe a top of the line lens as well. That could be, Xiaomi might be trying to build a flagship phone to compete with and maybe outspec the iPhone. I imagine that's what they're up to. The
Is
next, yep.
oh sorry, is Snapdragon comparable to that M1, or is that the Apple M, or is
The
that?
M1 is not in the phone yet. That's
A15 Bionic, I mean the iPhone 13 and maybe A16 Bionic that is upcoming for the iPhone, the new
14.
one, 15, 14.
If they could put an M1 in a phone, then the M1 I'm confident, would outperform the Snapdragon 8. But we don't know because as of yet they've only got it in like the iPad, and we'll have to wait and see what they come out with in the phone.
Well, the M1 is the equivalent or the bigger brother of the A14 Bionic in this case, so it is kind of related to it.
Okay. Next, General Atlantic plans to invest $2 billion in India and Southeast Asia over the next 2 years and is currently in early stage funding talks with 15 startups. I think Southeast Asia makes a lot of sense. I've been here almost every day for 6 years, and it's been really interesting to watch how quickly it's developed in the post-COVID, the digitization of Southeast Asia. The next is from the Financial Times. BNP Paribas, the big bank, joins JP Morgan's blockchain-based Onyx network for the repurchase market, which has facilitated $300 billion in deals since December. And I guess we'll wait for Nicholas. When Nicholas comes in, let's ask him about that. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts on that. Singapore-based BUD, which offers a metaverse for Gen Z consumers and plans to launch an NFT marketplace, raises $36.8 million, led by Sequoia Capital India. What else? Didi shareholders vote to delist from the New York Stock Exchange, clearing the way for the company to work with Chinese regulators to prepare for a Hong Kong IPO. The story that will never die. That one, that one's been going. That drama has been going on as long as Tech News has. Yes, exactly right. I need to get that sound file back. What else? CNBC has a piece looking at the autonomous vehicle industry. Startups developing autonomous vehicles passed $12 billion in funding last year, up 50% year over year. Google details 3 campaigns that used Predator spyware developed in North Macedonia that exploited 5 Android vulnerabilities, which were found last year. And that's your big boring headlines for today, so we get to jump right into the tweets. There's a new story that just came out from the New York Times. It says, a look at efforts by more than 50 countries to control digital data produced by citizens, governments, and businesses, driven by concerns about privacy, economics, and more. Nations are accelerating efforts to control data produced within their perimeters. Yes, as I said, it's called sovereign clouds internally by the people at Amazon Web Services. And I haven't done that rant in quite a while, but that's a rant I used to do every week or so. That countries are going to start treating all the data that happens in their territories just like they treat all of the money that gets exchanged in their territories and all the people going in and out of their territories. They have the immigration borders, and they like to tax everything that happens in their territories, and they're going to want to now control all the data that goes in or out. And to do that, they're going to need control of all the servers, and they're going to need what's called sovereign clouds. And they're going to force everyone to capitulate into technical regimes that the government control. It's pretty cut and dry. And Germany's doing that with T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, and Google. And the problem is, and I remember when it's been a while since we covered that topic, and it used to be a popular topic a year ago in the earlier days of tech news. So it's funny to see the New York Times headline nearly verbatim what we've discussed many times previously, that governments driven by privacy and economic concerns are accelerating efforts to control data produced within their perimeters. Yeah, nearly verbatim, as I said, would happen. And was secretly happening behind the scenes in France, in Germany. And we read an article because there's basically 3 big data cloud companies: Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. There's a few others, Oracle and what have you. And even the Chinese are getting in it with Huawei and whatever. But governments obviously want to be able to control that. So, for example, in the case of Germany, they don't entirely trust Amazon or Google because those are American companies. So, but there is so much opportunity, quote unquote. You can hear the cash registers ringing in the ears of Amazon and Google and Microsoft to provide those clouds for those countries. And yet, Germany came up with what might be the prototype solution, which is it's Google's cloud, but T-Mobile, or sorry, Deutsche Telekom manages it, and they have somewhat exclusive controls of the permissions, which are sort of the keys to the cloud in terms of what goes. So there's an ombudsman who's in control of it, which is a company the government kind of trusts who has the skills to operate it. So we'll
Oh,
see. But yeah,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Oh.
No, only if you finish with this
Yep.
privacy thing. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at the same article that you were about the Onyx thing, because
No, maybe not.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Is it a New York Times article?
Well, there's an article that's been floating around. I mean, like between 8 and 4 hours ago. There's like similar articles about BNP Paribas and Onyx
Separate article.
about the
Yeah,
what?
we were just talking about that one.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that actually that's not a new marketplace. That's been around for a couple of years, and they do about 300 billion a day in trading on Onyx for repos. For those who don't know, like these are repurchase. They're basically these fixed asset loans that are backed by government securities, and not all of them are, but the vast majority of them are. And so what Onyx is doing is allowing them to essentially collateralize loans, so lend them out without it leaving their balance sheet for very short term periods. And the risk here is the same risk that you would find in DeFi, which is essentially if something happens with these short term loans, especially because they're these are highly leveraged trades, then there could be really severe impact because the loss is not just limited to whatever you put in your investment, but also repaying that loan. So, but for the most part, it's all QIBs, qualified institutional buyers. So these are all people who know what they're doing and are just working in blockchain. I think there's actually a really much more interesting article that's going on right now that Europe looks like they're looking to do stock and bond trading on blockchain also, which I think is pretty interesting. They did a very small pilot in Brussels. Ame might know more about it. And they said it was successful, but not broad enough to know whether or not it could be done. That couldn't actually be done the way it's set up there in the US because of securities regulations, but something similar could be done. And that would basically, lead to having regulated markets on blockchain, which would take out one of the biggest reasons people have unregistered transactions or unregistered securities on all of these exchanges is because there isn't much of a place to put it otherwise. This would actually be pretty huge if they could do that. But that's just another thing that's happening. So
Tyler,
yes.
we have a visitor on stage, someone who still owes us one Bitcoin. Did you see him?
No, I'm looking at articles and multitasking and whatnot.
Okay. Welcome
So,
back, Liko Nakamoto.
Rico. Was it Rico?
Rico,
Was that
welcome
Rico?
back.
Hey, sorry, I'm halfway here. I'm typing
Rico?
up some notes. But hey guys, how's it going?
What the hell happened to the price of Bitcoin, Rico?
I don't know. BlackRock might have attacked it a couple times.
You,
That
you,
was a good one.
did you remember
I
that
I
you?
wouldn't worry. I'd just be stacking like I've been stacking like crazy.
Totally.
This is
Stack
good
those
buying
sats.
times.
What?
If you
But
check out Stock to Flow creator Plan B's new tweet, it's got a really good article. But yeah, it's being manipulated and it's now
Rico,
a risk asset like any indices.
didn't we have a gentleman by the name of Kieran on stage who told you this was going to happen? And Matt, in fact, offered to bet you that
Exactly.
this was going to happen?
And that was a bet,
Yeah, I think
Liko.
he's a Dogecoin maxi.
He's not. He's a Wall Street trader. He doesn't care much
And
for
he's a
cryptos at all.
blockchain
No, he loves
lecturer
Dogecoin.
in
It's his
Imperial
favorite.
College.
I think he's left Twitter
Rico's
actually
totally giving him a
recently.
hard
I don't know
time.
what's going on with him,
I
but
can
yeah,
assure
he's
you he doesn't
disappeared.
give a shit about Dogecoin. I can tell you that.
he's pulling an Elon.
No,
He's trying to get out of it.
Yes.
No, no, no.
I'm just teasing.
But I'm
But
just
Liko,
listening. Sorry,
Liko,
guys. I'm kind of typing some stuff.
Liko,
I gotta
Liko, do
take
you
care
still
of this.
remember that there was a bet and you still owe us one Bitcoin?
I think he might have selective memory, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Tyler,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
I tweeted out something that's related to this, two pieces. One of them is that it was a recent one about Japan acknowledging Bitcoin. I'm sure Cheryl's read that one as well.
But by the
What do
way,
you mean? What do
by
you
the way,
mean by that?
we. Oh,
There was a
sorry.
bank. It's been print. I tweeted it out. Tyler probably could find it in the tweets. It was recent, and
Re-
No,
also the
it's a very
fact that
generous statement. What acknowledging? What do you
Sorry,
mean?
I missed your point. Please make the point again.
okay, 2 points related to crypto. One to Alexandra's comment being close to Belgium and just the drama in the EU, which is clearly what I could call it now that Lagarde said that crypto is worthless and Europe in essence is going backwards, and a number of people that are very in love with the space and proponents of the space are also saying the same thing, that Europe is kind of going a little bit backwards. They're falling behind. To Rico's point, it's kind of fascinating, Rico, because I just found out who my neighbors are of the buildings that are right down where I live. And yeah, sure enough, BlackRock's in the building, in the office complex, a few 150 meters from where I live, which is interesting. Always interesting to know that BlackRock was there, and I didn't even have a clue that they were in that building. And third point was the one that I tweeted out earlier to the tech news around the world, which had to do with Japan. And I'm trying to locate it now in the sea of tweets on the tech news around the world. This is always the fun one, Tyler, looking for these tweets. I would hope that I usually tag you on it too, Tyler. So if there's an ability, let me see if I find it. But it was interesting, and I purposefully put that one out there as well because it was a positive towards Bitcoin out of Japan. So I'm looking for it. So I'll mute myself till I find it, and then I'll have like my little Tourette's moment once I do.
Okay. Cheryl,
But
can
before, oh, sorry.
okay. I just wanted to ask Cheryl real quick. Can you recall what was the price of Bitcoin at the time of Kieran and Rico's little wager? Was it
I
around
do, Tyler.
55,000, somewhere in that ballpark?
It was around
Yeah.
55 to
Oh no,
60,000.
35. Is it 35 or something?
No, I thought it was 55.
Yeah.
Is that
No, it was
All right.
much
Yeah,
higher.
Hey,
yeah.
guys.
At
Much
that time
higher.
of
I
the
think
bet
it was
was
around
about
Hey,
50
Rico.
something,
35.
but it
Hey,
went
what's
No, I
up,
down.
thought it was
Amy?
higher, Rico.
Yeah, it might have been like
Higher.
38, 39, 40 around that price.
But we just recall that you
Was
lost
that
while you
like a year
disappear.
ago? When
yeah?
was that? I'm
It was
sorry.
about a year ago.
It
Yeah,
was about a year ago.
Yeah, it was about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
price of Bitcoin, because I remember it had shot up from 10,000 up to at least that 30,000. That first kind of big thrust that it had, and that was. Oh, I'm looking in Thai bot. Hold on.
I think at that time Liko think that it will go up, but Kiran said it will definitely go down. That in the end Kiran won.
But it
But
was
Liko disappear.
I think it was once 60,000. So
It was around 70K, yeah. But I'm not really. I'm curious as to what's the point here.
The
we're
point
trying to
is,
remember
Liko.
the numbers of that you
Well,
guys.
actually, it
It
could
went
be,
up and then it went back down and it
yeah.
went back up and now
No,
it's
I,
back
I think
down.
Tyler,
you
I
you
believe
you
that.
came on stage at around 50-ish, and then you say you will go up all the way to 100 or something, and then Kiran said you will go downwards to 30 something, and then you lost
Well,
the
it's
bet
still
when you
alive, right? It
disappear.
can still go up, right? And it can still go down,
No, but at
right?
that time the trend was going down, right? So he won the
The
bet.
trend was going down and then it went
Yeah, so
back
you
up.
lost the
Yeah.
bet.
Well, it went down to 27K in
Okay, but
July
did
and
you
then it went up
honor
to
that you
70.
lost the bet at that time?
Well, it went down and up, so yeah, we both lost, right? I don't know what else. I mean, what do you want from me? I think Kieran left because
Okay.
he didn't like the
I have
bullying.
I have I have pinned Tech News around the world Twitter account there, and there's a tip jar there, and you can you can drop one Bitcoin there if you honor your bet.
All
You know what?
right, sounds
we
good.
can
Thank
we,
Wait,
you.
before you go to the next news article, though, Ame, can you just, or anyone else who might have knowledge on this, why is backwards on crypto? What is this trend? Like, what
Wait,
was
what?
Christine
Wait,
Lagarde's thing
what was the
about?
question, Alexandra? You dropped out a little bit in the middle of your
Oh, sorry.
question.
Just why are they going backwards? Is it just the
Um,
price, or is there
well, I
something
mean,
else happening?
no, it's not. It's just, it's the I mean, Rico has a depth. He's
I
articulating certain
do.
things very clearly, Rico. But I'm going to
Yeah,
say it in my own sort of New York sort of living in Europe. I just think that like Lagarde and like the EU are just like not really understanding what cryptocurrency. They're lumping it all in the same, and they're just she's warned that they're worthless and should be regulated. His an extremely modest opinion is that the cryptocurrency is worthless, it's founded on nothing, and there's no underlying assets to serve as a safety net or a safety anchor. I've always stated that these types of assets are highly speculative and extremely risky. She said it on Dutch television the other day that she's concerned about those who do not comprehend the risk, who will lose everything, and who will be severely disappointed by digital assets. And I'm purposely saying that because the Dutch just don't agree. There's a lot of Dutch that are very, very savvy and very, very intelligent about the space because Plan B is Dutch. And he has
exactly.
been the one that's been navigating this analytics. And if there's one country in Europe that is absolutely badass when it comes to data analytics, quantitative and qualitative, it's the Dutch. It really is.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is they're looking at the data, and they're looking at the data in millions of ways. So Alexander, to your point, what's happening is that you have people that are very, very old in the European Parliament, in the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, and now there's a battle between the young that are sort of understanding the space, maybe a few people, right, Rico? But let's just keep it topical
Yeah.
that you have the old and the new. But the challenge is that the top three countries that hold the most seats on the parliament is Germany, France, and I think Netherlands is number 4, but Germany holds
Yeah.
the most seats.
Belgium.
Belgium. So when you think of Benelux, especially when you see the tweets, we're really having a fun row about it, right? Because it's like Germany has allowed people to not pay taxes on crypto this year. Luxembourg is like giving it 6 months, and the EU is saying no at all. So we're all just kind of like looking with eyes rolling to the right and side and center as to like there's no clear, consistent message on what they're doing. But it's
Uh,
interesting because Lagarde's son invests in crypto.
yeah.
So
And
I
the
feel like Lagarde's a female Peter Schiff, if I had to say that.
yeah, I think you're on par. Yeah, I mean, it's got utility. There's a G7 summit meeting, and I believe it's in Germany this year. I forget, but they're going to be talking specifically about stablecoins and yes, Bitcoin and DAOs as well. So,
Yeah, and
but
Davos is going on right now. Davos is going
yeah,
on. Polka dots at
exactly, back
Davos.
to back.
Everyone's literally in Switzerland right now for the next
Oh, that's right,
4 days,
Switzerland.
or
Thank
three
you.
or four
That's where
days.
it's at. Yeah. Just so everybody knows, yeah, I might have been wrong, but Bitcoin will still go up. Okay, well, this is a network, and I don't know anybody else on this app that's actually given out as much Bitcoin as I have. So if you like, I'm doing a room later. I use Lightning if anybody uses Lightning, but
Pew, pew, pew,
yeah.
pew, pew.
So I'm gonna go because I've got a meeting, but good talking, I guess. I hope that rests the qualm. Peace, guys.
Yeah, you know what, Rico?
Bye,
With this promotion, you owe us one more Bitcoin, so 2 Bitcoin now.
Okay, so it's a
Tyler,
bit.
I'm looking for
Yes.
the Japanese one. I did find the one about JP Morgan and BNB Paribas.
Yep.
I don't know if I tweeted that one out.
Yeah. We.
I got like slew of them. There's the French banking giant. There is also the lawsuit with Ripple that's still ongoing, but they've just signed a major, major deal in Europe. Ripple just literally did a major, major coup, so they're pretty happy about it because they've managed to move forward to get XRP aligned in Europe. I'll double check where they're going into, but there's a bunch of interesting conversations going on. Litecoin just put its privacy on its new upgrade, which means now Litecoin actually has a privacy feature, which is a fork of Bitcoin. So there's a lot of moves and shakes in the back, and you know, the World Economic Forum that's going on in Davos right now is, serious people are still saying that crypto is going to stay despite the market setbacks, and that's what they're all saying in Davos. They're literally there to align And Gavin Wood is in Davos right now from Polkadot, and no one has seen the magic of the power chains and the Polkadot relay chains yet. And I've been humbled to be part of the ecosystem as an ambassador. And I got to tell you, what I'm seeing is just out of this world. And when they drop, it's going to be really epic. And I think the geeks in the room would understand the processes that they're disrupting. But I think if we're looking at it in a silo perspective, that's not how I look at it. I'm looking at it more from the disruption of the technology and the processes that it's going to help.
At the same time, we have three different international groups that are talking about how to regulate cryptocurrency. And I think I mentioned this before. This is all very new. Financial issues and financial crimes are generally not dealt with internationally, like formally, because they don't have the same risk and they have a lot more benefit to being a housing jurisdiction, like a safety jurisdiction. But this started with Binance as the countries working together. So now the G7 and the J5 and another organization of, another G20, I'm not sure, but another organization of people are also are now getting together and trying to align their regulations. So the good part is with alignment, right, comes a more predictability. That's great. The bad part is I don't know who's pulling, like it seems like the US jurisdiction seems to be governing the rule structure, which we saw from last year, that they've actually outright asked the US if the US rule structure could be manipulated or used as the basis for all of these international regulatory schemes. The problem is that for some of them, we don't actually know if they're taking a more or less conservative bent. If this was actually, I mean, my concern is that the price is actually dictating how strict these regulations are going to end up being. So if this were, 6 months ago, then we would have had regulations like, okay, well, generally speaking, these are the things we have to worry about, but overall, it looks like a good investment. But since we're in, like a downward motion, even though it's cyclical for all markets, I'm concerned that they're going to take a much harsher approach in some unified fashion than they would otherwise be inclined to do, given just the nature of the asset. It's odd actually that some of these assets are finding a lot of troughs, even when there's literally zero change in the fundamental structure of the asset itself, right? So for retail investors, whatever you thought about Bitcoin 4 weeks ago, it hasn't fundamentally changed. So there's nothing that should impact your decision to stay invested or not invested, right, based on any fundamental change, because there hasn't been one. And that's true of almost everything in this
But
sector.
Alex, there was Warren Buffett did announce, what was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that he wouldn't buy all the Bitcoin
But
for
yeah,
25. Now, granted, I'm not
yeah,
saying that Warren Buffett is someone we should listen to when it comes to technology. He got into Apple late, right? But that was, I think, a significant uh, explanation on his part of why he wouldn't invest in cryptocurrencies, and I think
but
that
that,
that has affected the market.
well, but
I
that's
wonder
still,
what his stance is going to
that's
be
still,
on
that,
stocks, right? Because
that's
stocks are
still
going to
a,
be taking a huge
well,
nosedive. That's his bailiwick. So, what'll be the explanation
And true, and
for
that's
what's
why I
going to
think he's
happen
but
sitting
to
on a pile of
stocks?
cash
wait
right
a
now,
second.
right?
Yeah,
Oh,
to
wait, just if
stocks
I could
and
just finish
bonds and everything
this
else.
Yes,
The point
Alexandra.
is that the fundamentals haven't changed. These are people with opinions, but they weren't invested in the market anyway. So that doesn't change fundamentally whether or not
No,
Bitcoin
but it
or
does,
any
because
other
there are things that have changed over the last month, like Fidelity announcing that it would allow people to invest in Bitcoin. That should have been a huge market mover, and it wasn't. So someone like Warren Buffett coming
There's no
out and
reason
saying,
for that, though.
yeah, but someone like Warren Buffett coming out and saying what he says, people don't understand Bitcoin. So even though the fundamentals haven't changed, the idea that people's understanding has changed because it's that they don't understand it, and that's and the fact that Bitcoin has moved with the market. The market's down 50%, Bitcoin was down 47%, or so it just shows.
but again though, that is people's mind. That's like a emotion based trading that has nothing to do fundamentally with the value of any of these any of the crypto that we're talking about, right? It is what it is. There's been no change in the underlying code. This is just people opining on it. Some have more weight than others, but at the same rate that JP Morgan was never going to touch it, now they're running Onyx, right? So excuse me. So this is the issue, is that what we have, and I mean, Fidelity's response was muted because Elizabeth Warren came out right afterwards saying, shame on you. Even and then she said, you've increased the risk of fraud, which objectively is the one risk you don't have in blockchain. So, this is again opinion rather than any fundamental change. I just want people to maybe start extracting the two from one another. They've been conflated for so long. People's opinion about whether or not something is an asset and whether or not they want to invest in it is very different from someone else saying, I don't think it's an asset, right? Whether or not someone wants to invest in it is related mostly to their risk profile, their resources, their timeline, and their goals. No two people have exactly the same of any of those things. It is fine for someone to not want to invest in it when you do. It doesn't mean either of you is wrong, but deciding that something is fundamentally different because one person or 20 people or 1,000 people have said, no, I think that is not investable, doesn't make it not investable. It just makes it a bunch of words around this. So if we could just strip out and get back to fundamentals of investing, this is essentially where if you thought that it was worthwhile, 4 weeks ago, there's nothing that's fundamentally changed. To the contrary, as Annette said, there's been some positive news that isn't impacted in the price, but that is not what we're seeing, right? We're seeing people who care more about other people's interpretations rather than the fundamentals, and we need to get away from that.
Yeah, that the problem is, as someone who's done decades of event marketing for the shows that I took on tour, I always would ask people that I was training, where does the marketing battle take place? And the marketing battle takes place in the mind of the consumer. That's all that counts, right? It doesn't matter what we know about the fundamentals and what they don't know. If they believe it, that's the problem. And so that's the problem also with the marketing. I would say I agree with everything you said, Alexandra. If it were just talking about Bitcoin, but Luna has shown that there's a big difference with everything else. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I would just say that there's always been a huge difference between proof of work and proof of stake. And, unfortunately, Bitcoin is kind of conflated with the rest of the crap. And anything that's like, that depends on a human opinion, that can change is the problem with those other altcoins, which can't happen with Bitcoin. So, anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I just wanted to put that in there.
Okay. Kind of potentially related news, kind of one of the bigger news items today on the non-tech that we missed over was Biden is in Asia, met with Japanese Prime Minister, and in doing so, Biden outlined a new trade deal for Asia, basically. Would provide,
So IPEF.
yes, the IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which would provide quote-unquote concrete benefits for the people in the region. It would enable partner nations to collaborate on supply chains. That's the key, folks. That's the key. And anti-corruption programs. That's code for fuck China, is what that means. Let me just help you read between the lines there.
I thought corruption is a U.S. thing, the lobbying.
Not when you're talking trade corruption. So it says the 13 members of the framework are, in no particular order, actually in very specific order, actually. It's the US, India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. That, my friends, is everything from Japan to India that America feels is going to be on its side. Notice who's not in the list. Very notably, Cambodia, who we already know was going to be on Team China, and Myanmar, who we already knew was going to be on Team China. Thailand was a bit up for grabs to a bit, and the U.S. has been whining and dining Thailand endlessly over during COVID. And the Philippines needed some whining and dining. Singapore, and this is going to really piss China off. This thing,
Yeah, but no Taiwan. Did you notice that?
yeah. And
Yeah.
on the issue of Taiwan, Biden said today, in the past few hours, that the U.S. would back Taiwan militaristically if China invades, which is the strongest statement the U.S. has ever made about Taiwan.
Right away, White House announced that it still insists that there is no policy change about the strategic ambiguity. So it feels like the bad cop and the good cop scene.
But to have Japan and India, well, I mean, Japan was a no-brainer. Korea was a no-brainer. But for India to join is a big deal. And that right there, that IPEF, that combined, these countries represent 40% of the global economy. And there you go. That's totally worth Biden's time to get up over there and head over to Asia. Here it comes. Here comes America trying to. This was the tricky stuff that Biden needed to do with a quickness, and he's doing, which is try and get everybody in Asia, like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, on Team USA in terms of an alliance with regard to supply chains. So the next tweet that I have, because we're now going through the tweets, is from Valerie, and it's a BBC article. It says global food supply chains are at risk from malicious hackers. Yes, indeed they are, and that's why I keep telling you to take control of your own food. And BB has one from Bloomberg that Amazon is using gig economy drivers to make deliveries from shopping malls in a test that could help expand a variety of goods for quick shipment. A handful of brick and mortar retailers are participating in letting gig economy drivers in their pajamas bring you stuff from your local shopping mall that you order from Amazon. The next is from Heyman.
Tyler,
Yes.
before you move past that little gig delivery piece,
Yep.
I just wanted to kind of give you a perspective of something that's a little bit of a battle going on in Europe. Do you remember how we have all the pandemic opened up all these grocery delivery, like fast grocery delivery, like Gorillas,
Yep.
Flink,
Yep.
Get Here, and Crisp? Well, there's been a complaint in some of the nicer neighborhoods of, like Amsterdam, for example, that they want to stop in the municipality of Amsterdam. They want to stop the dark stores
Yep.
in neighborhoods where they're creating a nuisance, and it would put a lot of those riders out of work because it's been passed already, and now like there's a bit of a fight now because there's a convenience element that you see that a lot of the expats and like ones moms that have kids, that it's really convenient for them, right? But then you have the flip side of it, which is the disturbances that are caused by the dark stores. So now there's this like battle back and forth, and the two ones that are getting hit hard are Gorilla and another one that's a local service provider like that. But I wonder how these speed of delivery and all that other stuff are going to be impacted by the neighborhoods in which there might be empty real estate where they're using as hubs for inventory so that they could be as fast as they can to deliver product. And most of the time, those that are riding these bikes and stuff like that, they may not be, they may be those that need the job, so they might not necessarily be someone that would understand, hey, we're in a residential neighborhood, let's kind of keep it down to a slow roar. But then at the same token, if you have a lot of bikes or a lot of deliveries coming in at all until like 10 o'clock, you're going to have a like somewhat of a noise disturbance. So this is something recent that happened just last week, that they've stopped it in certain neighborhoods, and it's going to affect those companies like Gorilla and another company that does that same thing. So Amazon will be delivering as well. So just saying.
Yep. Okay. So Heyman found this one from Forbes about Mojo Vision's smart contact lenses, which they claim are ready for real world testing. Quote, basically, it's all about giving you superpowers. We're building the world's first true augmented reality smart contact lens. So something you could put in your eyeball. And it seems
That's highly disturbing. Is that not highly disturbing for other people? Like, I don't know. Like, it's not even glasses that you could easily take off, assuming that they're also corrective lenses. I mean, I don't know if they are, but doesn't that, I don't know. That just seems like if you need it to stop in an emergency, it's too inconvenient to take off. So I'm not really sure what kind of AR they're trying to add with that, but I don't know. That doesn't seem like a very useful application unless it's like assistance kind of AR, like like for someone who can't see like the edge of the sidewalk is here or something like that. I don't know if that's what direction they're going in, but for like play and stuff, that doesn't seem like a safe idea.
So, Alexandra, I'm for a long time I've said there'll be some resistance when we start putting stuff in us. It's clear it's going there, and there's going to be, I think, a split between people who are comfortable with that and don't see that as threatening to the human identity, and people who do see it as threatening and weird. And I can totally sympathise with both sides. It's clearly going to happen. Computers used to be the size of a room, then it's desktop, then a laptop, then then it's in your hand, and then it's on your wrist, and then it's under your skin eventually and inside. It'll be led by medical therapeutics, as it already is. Think of pacemakers, cochlear implants, Parkinson's implants, and so forth and so forth. But I think it's going to be really interesting because what's gonna happen is there's going to be people choosing to have things inside their body that will augment their performance one way or the other, and there will be when they don't necessarily need it, and there'll be people who think that's not okay. And the bigger that gap gets, then the more interesting it's going to become from a society point of view as to whether that creates two different kind of classes of people. So I'm interested. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I know that people will put stuff under their skin and in their bodies for not just medical reasons. I'd be one of them, and I know some other people will find that abhorrent. And I hope that those two groups of people can just get on with each other and respect each other for their relative views. So anyway, just some thoughts. It's Ben. I'm done waffling.
No, I didn't think. I'm surprised to find out that I come out on the it's kind of icky thing. Like I know that there were people who were talking about putting in just chips so that you could find like missing children and stuff like that. And that there was so much resistance because the idea of like microchipping people, that the ease with which it could people could somehow take over that technology and then be able to locate everyone. Figuring out all of the ramifications of this stuff is difficult. But I mean, also, contacts can irritate my eye. So I'm like, I wouldn't do that. But it's an interesting idea. I mean, like augmentation, I think is very interesting. But then I think, like how they disallowed that one runner from competing in the Olympics who was, I think he was paraplegic, but he had two robotic legs. Like they were not, you know what I mean? Like they're the athletic kind that you can really run fast with. And they said that he was unfairly augmented, so he couldn't compete in the Olympics. He could compete in the Paralympics, even though his time was competitive with fully abled Olympians. So I wonder then if you're going to have people that, then do something to those robotic legs, those I don't know what other thing you call it, but they could augment like they could conceivably be far faster than humans. So I think, I mean, some of it is like the competitive advantage is one thing, but also, I mean, isn't that the beginning of sort of like modifying people into becoming more robotic? Like, is that the beginning of that?
Well, I mean, we're already deep into that. Anybody who wears eyeglasses is already modified in a very simple way. Having a phone in your pocket is an absolute superpower compared to our ancestors. Communicate with anybody anywhere in the planet instantly, find out practically anything mankind knows, calculate things of enormous complexity all instantly, all in your pocket. That's already a superpower. It's just in your pocket, and frankly, it's inconvenient in your pocket. So I think it's happening. Not human, but they're just not as versatile as the human body. It's happening, and technology is subject to an exponential increase in performance normally, or at least S curves. So it starts slow, goes fast, slows down, and then breaks through to a new paradigm. So it's already happening, and it's, if you go in the Science Museum in London, they have a human body with all the things that commonly get put inside. And if you look, and it's really cool, it's like a translucent human body, but it's got like a pacemaker in it, and an artificial hip, and an artificial knee, and a cochlear implant, and about 40 things, 50 things inside this body. It already looks like half android. And that's the things that are routinely fitted today with no controversy at all. So, it's happening. It's happening. And I don't find it threatening at all. It's a risk reward basis for each individual to decide whether the inconvenience, risk, and so forth is worth the reward. Personally, I find sticking eyeglasses on so I can see my freaking phone worth the hassle of having eyeglasses in my pocket. But everyone's got to make their own judgment.
Okay,
We should have a whole room on that. That's super cool. I'm sorry. I just think that's really interesting concept. So
next is from BB that Apple shipped a 79-pound iPhone repair kit to fix a 1.1 ounce battery.
That doesn't make logical sense whatsoever.
I'm retweeting it right now.
That's got to be pounds in money, not pounds in weight, surely.
Pounds in weight, I believe. It's from The Verge, which is an American publication, so they wouldn't say, it says, Apple must be joking. That's how I felt again and again as I jumped through the hoop after ridiculous hoop to replace the battery in my iPhone mini. Part of that was the repair process. And he talks about how Apple recently launched self-repair service program. Apple would even let me buy the parts.
No, it is 79 pounds in weight. Yeah, you can see from the images they've sent him like these massive Pelican cases full of equipment. Yeah, I guess they just want you to do the job properly.
Or they want to
Yeah,
become a
it's
$3 trillion company becomes how? Or how do they become that? Well, first of all, they had their adapters. So everyone who has an Apple device knows that adapters are a thing. I think that's how they got to their first trillion. Their next trillion will be with these repair kits, the Apple exclusive repair kit.
that's a funny but ridiculous concept that they got to a trillion because of their adapters. But I know what you mean.
I think might be true though with the with the change in the power cords. Every single person in the family has a different power cord they have to use for their Apple phone. It's ridiculous.
It's
Well, now they
provide
don't ship.
the base to help fix the iPhone when you open it. So the base is very heavy. That's why it says the 79 pounds for that. But yeah, it's
Well,
ridiculous. You can just use something easier to fix, to fix that on your table, then open it.
now they don't ship power cords at all for environmental reasons. So now you order 3 or 4 lower quality ones over the lifetime of the phone and have them shipped individually by Amazon and throw them all in the bin after a few months of them not working. It's great.
But it's
Whatever
very
happened to
expensive, yeah.
sustainability?
So maybe that
What
make you feel worth it.
what about the sustainability of all those like just producing all of those and then them going just back into like this sort of vicious cycle?
Weren't we talking about how the EU is making them standardize their plugs or that kind of stuff? Because, yeah, exactly this reason. You have like a rainbow of different ones, and then it's just like, what do I do now?
Yeah, USB-C. Go for it, guys.
Yeah, they
You
did
can do it.
introduce USB-C, right?
Not on the iPhone yet. The 13
Not on the
might be the
iPhone
last
yet.
one without
God
it. Yeah,
damn it.
hanging in there with the Lightning connector. But in fairness, the Lightning was better than micro USB, right? The Lightning's reversible. It has the bits that wear out on like USB-C on the. That's not true. No, ignore that last bit. But it's reversible. You've got to give it that, and it can charge at a decent rate and so forth. Yeah, I think we'll hopefully see the end of Lightning with this next generation of iPhones. But let's wait and see.
So the next one's from BB from the BBC, that Clearview AI is fined in the UK for illegally storing facial images. Facial recognition company Clearview AI has been fined more than 7.5 million British pounds by the UK's privacy watchdog and told to delete the data of UK residents.
Naughty boy, Charles.
Yeah. And how are they going to confirm if the data was deleted?
Well,
And
furthermore, Tyler, how do you delete the data without actually corrupting old backups? Because a good backup, you put it on something non-volatile, tape or whatever, and you stick it somewhere else and you put it kind of offline, and that's your backup. Now, if you want to delete the data, you've got to delete the backups or wait until they roll off the back. But if they have a 10-year backup strategy, it's not really deleted, is it? And then if you delete it out of the backups, the logistics of that, it's difficult, nearly impossible, to go back through a backup archive and selectively delete certain stuff without putting the rest of the backup archive at risk. Tricky.
Okay. The next is from Jason from Washington Post. Turning manure into money. Utilities and farmers are turning cow manure into power, removing methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, from the atmosphere in the process. There you go.
It's like reverse farting. It's cool.
Yeah, but this is very old. I mean, in India they use cow manure and that you burn it like fuel. This is hardly innovative. The next,
Well, here in the city of Waterloo here in Canada, they collect dog poop and turn it into fuel. So that's kind of funny.
Oh, why not go just a
Some
step further
Well,
and
someone
cook
might want
one?
to tell Paris that. Someone
people,
might want to tell Paris that.
well, people have been doing that for all sort of, waste throughout history. Cow dung comes to mind.
If you're talking about like random stores of dog poop, yeah, pretty much like, Italy and Paris have just wild open collections, free and available. But does anybody remember the cows in space comment that Tyler made a while ago? This would prevent the cows in space.
so Valerie has the next one from Reuters. Putin promises to bolster Russia's IT security in face of cyber attacks. And the next is from Jeff G. That this is our chance to play our favorite show. The first country has introduced mandatory monkeypox quarantine as global cases rise. Oh, did we cover this already in some sense or not?
at the beginning, I said that, but yeah, many people might not have listened to this. So yeah, maybe we can continue to play.
Yeah, we thought 2022 was going to be, a little bit easier, and boom, monkey COVID pox coming soon.
Okay. Which country is the first to implement monkeypox quarantine?
China.
No.
Now the case is only in Europe and America, so that's about
Italy?
yeah.
Nope.
Germany?
Canada.
No.
Portugal?
That's a good guess because that had a lot of cases, but no. Belgium has become the first country to introduce a 21-day quarantine for monkeypox patients as cases spread around the globe.
That's even longer than COVID. So it seems it's getting seriously, concerned.
And Cal Patel shared the one from CNBC that Biden says U.S. willing to use force to defend Taiwan, prompting backlash from China. Yep. Next is from Pat that via Bloomberg that the world is grappling with severe heat waves already. Yep, we had record-breaking days in Pakistan of 50 Celsius. alongside sharp rising energy prices and limited power supplies, which make for a dangerous, scorching summer across the globe. That's exactly right, Pat. It's going to be a rough one. The next one is from Sharon via the New York Times. The Asian Pacific bloc to see more Western influence to apply pressure on China. That's the New York Times. Biden to begin new Asia Pacific economic bloc with a dozen allies that we talked about earlier. The goal is the resurgence in U.S. influence in the region. Yes, exactly right. Especially vis a vis China. Exactly right. As I've said, would happen for many months. This has been in the making for quite a while, that the U.S. has been whining and dining everybody in Asia to join Team USA, to step away from China in the next global order. The new global order, which will be the US and its friends versus China and Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Cambodia, and Myanmar, and whoever else they can convince to join their side. And it will be a lot about supply chains and a lot about importing and exporting. And Russia's a little foreshadowing of things to come. The next is the
Tyler,
US. Yes.
I think Dr. Catherine just joined us on stage. I think she has some comments about the
Okay,
monkeypox.
go right ahead.
Hi,
Hi,
Catherine.
good morning, everyone. I was just passively listening with respect to the comment about monkeypox and the country that you asked, are they instating a quarantine? Actually, quarantine is the term we use for those who are exposed. Those who are infected, they go into isolation. An isolation interval of 21 days is implied for anyone who's actively infected because they are contagious. The incubation period is up to 21 days, and you're actually infectious to others when you have the rash and the lesions that are active with monkeypox. Now, to be clear, monkeypox is nowhere near as contagious as COVID-19 and influenza and other viruses. The R naught is 1 or less.
Not yet.
And you have to be in very close contact with other people, usually touching, rubbing on them, breathing very closely, coughing large particles on them to transmit. Thank you.
Until
Something like
some
chickenpox transmission?
until some cyber genetic hacker makes that thing go airborne.
Or just random mutations cause a change in the behavior of the dynamics. So I think quarantine is especially important so we don't have escape cases or breakthrough cases of mutations.
What's
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly?
it's a
this is
DNA
John. If I could,
virus. You guys, this is a DNA virus. So DNA viruses don't mutate like
Oh,
SARS-CoV-2 virus and influenza viruses. So we've had this in circulation for a long time, probably hundreds of years. So I don't think there's a reason to panic. You have symptoms when you're contagious. That's also different than SARS-CoV-2. So a lot of reason here to not panic or worry too much.
Tell
yeah,
that.
the evolution of monkeypox is pretty restricted to what are called clades or pedigrees. So there's a West African and an East African, and within those clades there are a lot of subvariants. So while they don't mutate as rapidly as RNA, there are already a lot of extant variants. And so it's really critical that globally every single case gets sequenced. Hopefully, the US will play in that game. I was speaking to some friends in Holland last night, and the sequencing they've done looks like there are some mutations from the major Western African clade that they've seen, but they don't think that they're of any major significance. Um, so, to Tyler's point, if some genetic engineer wants to mess around with this for bioterrorism purposes, it the long incubation period is the big concern here. So the high contagion was the issue with COVID. This is a long incubation period, and how many people are going to voluntarily isolate for over 3 weeks to ensure that they don't transmit it, number one. And number two, how many countries are going to be able to implement supervised quarantining, because the effectiveness is, the policy is worthless unless there's some teeth in it. And so while the low contagion of the monkeypox will prevent it from becoming pervasive like COVID, and barring some unknown future mutation or manipulation, it's unlikely to approach anything resembling COVID. But on the other hand, it's going to be hard to rein this thing in quickly because of the long incubation period. So it's going to make a lot of news for a couple of months, and then eventually it will be tamped down. But the international travel with a 23-day incubation period poses risks that are significant for this ricocheting around the globe in much smaller numbers than with COVID. But let's hope that there are no variants that emerge with a higher level of contagion, or R naught, as they say. And so far, there's no evidence of that.
But John, isn't this the biggest outbreak we've ever seen in the Western world? In the Western world, even though there's
It's
been.
the biggest outbreak anywhere outside of Africa. And so you have to ask the question, why now? And the only thing, and we debated that issue last night, and the only hypothesis that I have for that is that, people have predicted since the beginning of COVID that when it was over, we would have a roaring 20s like party all night. And a rebound from all the cabin fever that exists globally from COVID. And it may be that what we're seeing is the first evidence of the party till you drop kind of zeitgeist, particularly among um, uh, travelers that have uh, you know, a lot of sexual encounters as part of their travel, because it appears so far um, that most of these cases globally are afflicting the men who have sex with men community, not exclusively. But it does, and it's not because it's sexually transmitted. It's just that the close, intimate contact overcomes the relatively low contagion of this virus.
Hmm. Okay. The next tweet is from Ken from the Wall Street Journal. The headline says crypto might have an insider trading problem. Public data suggests that several crypto investors profited from inside knowledge of when tokens would be listed on exchanges. And the next is from Anthony, that the U.S. government buys millions of monkeypox vaccines. The massive $119 million order of jabs, which can be used to treat both the monkeypox virus and smallpox, was created by the biotechnology company, blah, blah, blah. So the U.S. already taking some precautions.
And
And
assuming that that vaccine proves to be safe at scale, um, personally, I would look forward to getting that vaccine, not for monkeypox, but for the bioterrorist smallpox viruses that sit in labs around the world, and that someone as illustrious in genomics as George Church has already said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if it seems like this is an overreaction to get vaccinated for monkeypox, if it also covers smallpox, which it does, not a bad idea.
okay.
John, quick question for you, if I can. This is Jeff. I've been reading some stuff online also related to your previous comments about why it's happening now. And somebody had mentioned that because of how COVID has severely degraded our immune systems, that we may find lots of viruses coming out now because we just cannot fight back against them. What are your thoughts on
John,
John,
you're
you
muted.
John?
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute. Um, the valid point, I've thought of that as well. That doesn't appear to be prominent in the early reports, but as it spreads, I think that's absolutely going to be a factor because immunosuppression is a feature of both acute COVID and long COVID. And so any immunosuppressive state makes you more vulnerable to infection, particularly in the T cell domain, and the T cell domain is likely to play a significant role here. So I think that portends for a more prolonged outbreak of monkeypox globally. But I don't think there's evidence yet that that was the cause for origination of it. But time will tell. We're so early, and just like with COVID throwing us curveballs right and left, this is going to be very curious because there's never been a time in history where international travel and exposure and widespread immunosuppression have sort of coincided. And so, modeling this out is going to be very difficult. What the best immunologists, virologists, and epidemiologists say today is likely to evolve simply because we're in a different host environment than previously. So even if the virus doesn't involve the evolution of the host, that being us, including the immunocompromised, and the fact that we keep a lot of people alive through immunosuppression these days who would have been dead before the era of immunosuppression, the dynamic between infectious agent and host has shifted. So it's a very valid point, but I don't think it's played a big role in how we saw this outbreak. But to summarize, I think it may well play a significant role in trying to get rid of it.
Okay, from Ken via Forbes, Bill Gates explains why he doesn't own any cryptocurrency. The fourth richest person in the world says in a Reddit Ask Me Anything session that he likes investing in things that have valuable output. Kind of repeating what his friend Warren Buffett said, that if he owned all the Bitcoins, he couldn't really, what value would it have if he gave some to somebody else? Unlike a company, if you buy all the shares of Apple, well, then you just own all of Apple. So, the next is that the Russian tank commander who committed some war crimes has been jailed for life over those crimes. 21-year-old Vadim Shishimarin. Shishimarin, yeah, that's his name. Is going to jail for life ostensibly. And Prime Minister Modi met with SoftBank's Masayoshi Son, which is one of the biggest investors in all of India, especially when it comes to tech. Probably hoping that he continues to invest, and that's a really big question as we sit here in late May 2022. Will the massive investments into Indian tech continue? It doesn't seem as though it will at the same pace that it was previously. Balenciaga fashion brand now accepting Bitcoin and Ethereum payments. It's kind of interesting, is it not, Amay, the amount of high fashion brands that have a fondness for crypto?
I mentioned that to you, Tyler. Remember, we're literally so ahead of ourselves. How
Yeah.
many times did I say last year when coming back from the Bitcoin conference that once retail fashion stepped into this space, the tsunami and the waterfall would start to come in? And Balenciaga, Kering Group, which is massive in terms of, Gucci, Bottega Veneta, Stella McCartney, you've got a number of banners underneath it. Yeah,
Yep.
they're all involved in it. I mean, and I said it was going to be starting with luxury because they have the they have the community already there. Like when I worked with Mulberry, they have a private database of like thousands of private VIP clients. I mean, why wouldn't they strategically align their brand to start introducing it to their community and onboarding them? And it was only just like a few weeks ago that Gucci's testing out 10 to 12 stores in the United States accepting Bitcoin, Shiba Inu, and Dogecoin at their registers. And yeah, I mean, this is something that I know as well because one of my dear friends is one of the platinum executive consultants on the Kering Group project in Milan, which is Milan and Paris. So a lot of this has been going on. A lot of it's been going on at the strategic level. And this is why, like, Ken and I were having a lovely, well, I thought it was lovely, a back channel conversation about like the 150,000 recruits that are going to be onboarded through the metaverse by Accenture. You know, I mean, and Ken, I did some recon on that one, and it was a very interesting way that they presented that story, because what they're going to do is they're going to do the recruitment inside the metaverse. They're like the people that they hire, they're going to sort of onboard them within the context of their metaverse, which is very interesting because that actually in some ways makes sense because most of the talent that I'm seeing in terms of the candidate pools that are understanding the development of 3D wearables, a lot of that fun stuff that's going on to build the metaverse. I'm not super technical at this moment. I'm just like getting ready for something else, so my head's elsewhere. But it's coming from those regions like India, Africa. So if you onboard them in the metaverse, they can work remotely and they're sorted. They don't have to leave their country. And this is also why I find it really fascinating because there's a lot of money from these brands going into metaverse, like not even the NFT, because I think NFTs, PFP projects are kind of like blasé right now. I think now people are really expecting like more utility, more astronomical, more sexy, more popping artwork or innovative things in the smart contract. We've kind of moved beyond like what you saw like everyone aping into last year. We're now moving to like, gated memberships, real estate on the blockchain, NFTs that have way more utility and they're going into deeper communities. And I'm seeing this as well because that's what's coming out of the hackathons. What's coming out of the hackathons is come and play with us, show us these ideas you have, and then let's see if we can make magic happen inside, by connecting you with people inside that might know some technically something more than you, less than you, but you start to collaborate in communities. And I think that's really fascinating. So like I said, my interest is really how the disruption is going to go forward and how the fashion industry is going to cover their butt and sort themselves out when it comes to sustainability in a chain that is one of the least sustainable out of all the chains out there, the fashion supply chain. So I'd like to see how the Primarks and the top shops of the world are going to sort themselves out.
Tyler,
Yeah.
Balenciaga is under the Gucci group. It's pure marketing.
Also, well, what I think
There's
is
a banner underneath. Sorry, Alexandra. To be clear, Kering Group is the parent company for all of those, so it makes sense, Tyler, that Balenciaga would be stepping in because it's a banner and their revenue is not that impactful that they couldn't test it out. Plus, Balenciaga's client base is probably the client base that's similar to the Gucci when they dropped with Super Plastic. So yeah, they're really targeted, and to have a strong management team in Paris that is predominantly women, they're doing a pretty banging job on entering in from a perspective of strategy by using the more sexy, smaller brands so that it doesn't impact the Gucci brand, which is like the grandfather brand of the Kering Group. Sorry, Alexandra, go ahead.
I was actually just going to agree that I think it's true. That's what they're doing is actually the beginning of a metaverse play. But what I think is really interesting is looking at how the demographics of these brands have changed. Like even just over the last say 30 years, it's changed so much, and the people like they're making a blanket statement of who they're going after now, and it is not the old money anymore. So I think it's just
Nope,
really
it's the
interesting.
new money, Alexandra. You're right.
It's
It's
the
the
new
new
money.
money.
It's new young money, right? So the people who are in crypto, the
That's it.
people who, and they've made a ton of money, right? There's a lot of money there. I just think it's really interesting to
I'm
see
just
how these
waiting.
brands are changing.
Not to interrupt you, Alexandra, but I'm waiting to see what Prada does and Louis Vuitton, because you're right. The young money that's coming in is going to be interesting. And Tyler, when I worked in the luxury space, I do recall that three of the places I was responsible for was Singapore, Japan, and Korea. And let me tell you, so Tyler, I don't have to tell you because you're like a fortune teller with this stuff. You're a seer. You know the country that has such a they do have some cutting edge couture ways of using fashion. Japan has it, Korea has it, so does, and Singapore has a different market, has some expats, but it also has a much more pristine market. But Tyler, you know that Japan has an underbelly of music and art, and you know it. So this is where, where the Doc Martens are getting a resurgence of interest. So I'm really trying to see how like that's going to come popping, because I'm also seeing Japanese tourists come into Amsterdam and like just the way they're dressed. And that's kind of what I studied at FIT. Is Alexander's point's correct. Just see who's popping off what they're wearing. I mean, I met someone from Clubhouse that's totally deeply in the space who just got verified by Twitter with less followers, or not many more followers than me. I need to get verified by Twitter. But needless to say, he literally, when I saw him and met him in real life in Lisboa, he was like decked to the nines in like Prada jacket, Prada shirt, Prada hat. But it was super stylish, and it reminded me of the days where I used to shop the market back in like the 80s and 90s. So the new generation is those millennials, like Alexander is stating. She's spot on. It's going to be that new money, that crypto money that they want, because they know that that's where they're going to shop, and that's how they're going to distinct themselves from the Primarks, the Top Shops, the H&Ms, because they're going after the ones that are the market makers in the retail luxury space. And the Chinese or the Asian population, they love European luxury. They're one of the stores that had the most retail once the pandemic opened up, was the flagship store that Louis Vuitton has in Hong Kong. So kind of right there, you already see that this is just a tsunami waiting to happen. And once they start onboarding fiat through purchases through MasterCard or Visa, oh, floodgates open, floodgates open, floodgates open.
If that's another indicator, here in Greenpoint, in Brooklyn, Greenpoint, there's right now an exhibition from Louis Vuitton with Nike. They have an exhibition of sneakers that they designed together. It's actually for free if anyone wants to go. It's pretty cool.
How long is that exhibit, Katrina?
It
How long is it
started
on for?
Saturday, so I went yesterday, but I'm not sure how long it is.
I have a feeling it's going to continue through NFT NYC, which is through June, because NFT NYC is the week of my birthday, and so is ETH Hackathon, which I have been accepted to hack. So I'm really excited. So yeah, there's a lot going on at the end of June, that I have a feeling that exhibit will probably stay there, because I know Hollywood NFTs, who was on Clubhouse, but then she works for Rarible. She was already preparing and setting up some stuff in New York, and she flew back to England. But I do believe she's expected to go back around that time for NFT NYC. So there will be a lot of people from the Web3 metaverse NFT space speaking on stages, and a lot of events going on at night in New York. So Katerina, I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be on for a couple of months so that people could see it and experience it for sure.
Okay, last but not least, as May said, the World Economic Forum's going on in Davos. This started today, goes on for another 3 days. And the article that May shared, that I just retweeted to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, says that the World Economic Forum is taken over by crypto firms promoting rapid adoption. Enthusiasts of digital assets are dominating the 2022 World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, pushing for the adoption of cryptocurrencies. Indeed. In fact, the only person I know going to WEF this year, who I was with at this 24 hours ago at our Stockholm airport, and she was going to Davos and I was going to Bangkok, and she's a crypto enthusiast.
Tyler, may I ask
Yes.
how old she was, what her age group was, age band was?
Mid-30s.
Yeah. That's what this is. The girl that I know that recently got hired by the World Economic Forum from Amsterdam, she is like 28, 29. So I think that you're seeing Silicon Crypto Valley being situated in Zug, and also Davos is also kind of connecting with them for sure. So you're seeing some stuff really popping off in Switzerland as well. Lugano's taking Bitcoin. So I think you're seeing the luxury. And Alexandra, I got to give you flowers for that comment, because you're seeing that they're targeting the future generation of who's going to be the consumers and who are going to be the market makers and the trendsetters. And it's going to be the young adults, the millennials, the late 20s, early 30s.
It's also going to be a different kind of investor community, because I think they all rose out of this community where anything is possible. You know, we all just have to agree that it has value. So that stark difference in the people who came up and are now the crypto millionaires and billionaires, they have a different kind of incentive or motivations than other investors. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes the fabric of the investing landscape.
Can I just pop in on WEF for a second?
Sure.
Donna
Yes.
here. So, I mean, normally the people hired by WEF are under 30. 35 is a rare circumstance unless they're going to be senior management. So I think the kinds of people that
Oh,
they hire
interesting, Donna. That's
are
an interesting thing.
have always been young. They're
That's
people
very
that, work very hard. Most of them, now they're located both they have a little outposts around New York, San Francisco, et cetera. But the man still remains in Geneva, where they are. And there's also, I mean, WEF has changed enormously in terms of what Davos is in the last years, in that it used to be that there was an agreement with Davos, with cloisters, with everything, that everything was completely reserved for WEF participants. But what happened is that, just normally it's in the winter, the people that own like a storefront that sells gloves and some ski wear realized that they could rent out their places for that week to the Deloittes, the this, the that, the others. And that's when the crypto guys really got in a few years ago, because they rented a bunch of space because A, they had the money, and B, these merchants realized that they could get a lot of money. It used to be that no banners were allowed, no advertising was allowed. It was super, super strict. And you weren't even allowed to get into the hotel unless you wore a certain kind of badge. Now they sell badges that you could go into the hotels, into the lounges, without going into the conference centers or the main meetings. So it's changed a lot, but that it still has this concentric circle ish thing going on, like the core group. And I'm away from it now, but the core group still meets, of 200 CEOs, meets separately from a lot of the other people, as do industry participants, has separate meetings where things go on.
By the way,
I'm
I
just a,
just
wait, just a shout out there. Donna was actually managing director there, so I mean, we're hoping to get. I don't know if you're there this year, and you can give us kind of a report on what's going on from an insider state. But like that, I mean, that's like she really knows the WEF.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Alexandra, on that. No, I had made the decision that, like, basically after I was the managing director, I only went twice more, because we were trying to keep the women's leadership initiative going. I think it's very confusing for your boss your ex-boss to be there when your new boss is there. But a lot of the people that I originally hired are still there. That very few people leave, oddly enough. And they're just experiencing it now and in the throes of it, doing what they always.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just sent to Cheryl a link. If you want, she wants to pin it up. There's a interesting new book that I'm only partially through called Davos Man: How Billionaires Devoured the World, and so I'm sure if Davos has changed that much in the last 2 years, it might be a bit dated, but it's pretty interesting and obvious in terms of anyway. Uh, People might want to read that.
Okay, a couple other steps people just shared. Jeff G just shared this one from the Washington Post that they've done analysis. It says tensions rise as drought worsens and heat surges across California. The effects of climate change are advancing at a pace no one could have anticipated. Oh, really? Even me? In California, as the state enters its third consecutive summer of severe droughts. Here we go. Thank you for that one, Jeff.
Yeah, and there is. I think it's worth reiterating. There's a reason that the underestimates of how rapidly it would happen is manifesting now, and that is that most of the models simply look at the additive effects of each of the contributors to climate change, as opposed to the synergistic effects and the compound effects across the various contributors. And so I've been personally wary for decades that it was going to happen much faster than the worst projections for exactly that reason. And the more it impacts climate, the more interactive and accelerating those factors will be. So, our need for solutions is growing by the minute.
Okay, last but not least, Jeff G. from the New York Times. The era of borderless data is ending. Nations are accelerating efforts to control data produced within their parameters, disrupting the flow of what has become a kind of digital currency. Yep, there you go. Sovereign clouds is on the horizon, as predicted a year ago. So, good to see mainstream media catching up to tech news just a year behind. And thank you, Jeff G, for finding that article and everybody else as we get to the top of the hour of another tech news. And we'll do it again tomorrow. And thank you, everybody, for another headline focused. See you manana.